Okay, so I mentioned something in passing a few times, and I just wanted to clarify uh, that these videos are going to really try to avoid conspiracy and attempt to not allow bias to really shape the way the information is being conveyed. But I'm going to basically try to keep it in the realm of reality, talk about things that are real facts, and but on that note, I wanted to say a thing or two about semantics, specifically about, first of all, conspiracy, because we've had like a negative connotation has somehow become adapted to this idea of conspiracy. But a conspiracy theory is literally just a theory that explains something that's happened with the idea that it was done in secret by like purposely done in secret. So and a lot of conspiracy theories in the past have come out to be true, you know, but now we have this idea that automatically you hear the word conspiracy, you think of a crazy conspiracy theorist if you call someone a conspiracy theorist. But really, there's a lot of conspiracies out there that deserve some merit, and they've come true in the past, and it's not far-fetched to think that people are doing stuff secretly. You know, a lot of people were saying, maybe the Fed's, a lot of people had this theory that the Fed was out there just trading all sorts of secret money, and they were written off as conspiracy theorists, and then we just found out that they were doing that to the tune of $16 trillion of fake money. So just consider that when you hear the word, when you hear a conspiracy theory. Don't just reject it because it's a conspiracy theory, because it involves people doing stuff in secret. Just hear it out and hear the evidence and really try to judge and decide. But that said, I'm going to try and avoid conspiracies in these videos, and maybe one day I'll do one specifically pointing out a few conspiracies that I think deserve some consideration, but not today. The other thing is alarmist. The word alarmist, it's another word that's gotten a lot of negative connotations attached to it, and basically what I wanted to say about that is just consider the fact that sometimes people are alarmed because there's something that's a cause for alarm, like something that's alarming. But instead, whenever someone's alarmed, we've kind of come to be somehow conditioned to label them as an alarmist and therefore are crazy, and probably associate them with conspiracy theorists. So that was just a little note on semantics. And then second of all, I caught a little heat from some people because of using the word terrorist a lot in the last video, and I just wanted to clarify that I am not a terrorist. My statements in the last video were just trying to make a point and demonstrate that because of the broad language of the definition of someone who should be suspected as a terrorist that the government sets forth, and there are many bills that they've passed since 9/11, specifically the Patriot Act, the NDAA that's about to be signed into law, I would technically be covered. But the point was everyone would technically be covered, you know? So that's all I was getting at. And I'm definitely not a terrorist. That's just ridiculous. I have an extreme aversion to violence. Even just like fisticuffs makes me nervous and anxious. So, yeah. So, and just to, the word, since we're talking about semantics, the word terrorist has also been shaped a little bit to be a little off from the actual semantics of the word, and they've really done a pretty good job of, and when I say they, this isn't like a conspiracy theory, this is like what's really happened. They've gone out of their way, the government, to attach a notion of patriotism to the word terrorist, or I should say anti-patriotism, and also evil, which I think we can all agree, though, that the certain terror attacks that we've witnessed have definitely had an element of evil in them. But when they attached the notion of patriotism to it, then they attached it to a war. They said, we're going to war with terror. And if you think about it, that's kind of silly, because we can go to war with a group that we know to be terrorists, And that would be a good move. But when you say we're going to war with terror, you're just going to war with a tactic, and it's preemptive. It's like saying that you're going to go to war with invasions. And if you think about it, that's pretty silly. When you say you're going to war with terror, that instead of a specific enemy, what you're doing is basically opening the floodgates. You're saying now we have to define terror, because it's such a broad tactic. Now we have to define what it is, and so then they're at war with whatever they say terror is, and that's kind of dangerous, especially considering some of the more recent definitions of terror. But I'll leave that and let you watch my other videos. So that's just overall, that's just another page in the book of propaganda, government propaganda. And this again isn't like you probably thought immediately when I said government propaganda, oh, here he goes. But if you recall, in school we learned about the government propaganda during World War II, and when they had posters making Germany look crazy and having them as apes, squeezing women, and in the communist Red Scare, whenever they had posters of people dressed like communists, and they were like harassing women and drinking liquor, and I mean, it's part of our history, and it's not all, I personally am against it, but sometimes it's used for good. It's not always used for bad. Like when the Yes We Can posters encouraging women to become involved during wars, and the hemp for victory posters encouraging people. I thought that was funny. They legalized hemp just so that they could encourage people to grow it and give it to the government, and then they made it illegal again as soon as the war was over. So, and of course, famously 9/11 was used to invade Iraq, and once again, that's a thing that at the time was made out to look like a conspiracy when people talked about that, but now it's a known fact. There's been a lot of Bush quotes released, and he was quoted actually on the day of 9/11 in the meeting, calling 9/11. He said, "This is a great opportunity. We have to think of this as an opportunity." And the next day, he said, "Through the tears of sadness, I see an opportunity." And that's really it's really just indicative of of our government's purposes and their intents, which was basically they took 9/11, they attached patriotism to it. They said we're going to war with terror, and then they invaded Iraq, which had nothing to do, or was not linked in any way to the terrorist attacks. And even to this day, they haven't been able to come up with a link. And the best thing that they could do was say that they had weapons of mass destruction. So while everyone's fear is heightened about this terror, then the government says, oh, and by the way, we also suspect that this country has weapons of mass destruction, and theoretically, if they had them, they might someday decide to use them against us. And then people were really worried. See, they used different words than that, so it seemed more alarming. But so then they used that as a justification to get people's support to invade Iraq, and that was just ridiculous. But there we are. So now terrorism is so engraved in all of our minds and our daily lives that we don't even have to feel the fear anymore. We don't even have to experience fear. You just hear the word terrorism, and of course I know that terrorism is a bad thing, but I mean, to the point where they can just say terrorism in a bill and people will feel bad about themselves if they oppose it, or people will feel like they're unpatriotic. Now they're using them using the terrorists as a threat to pass bills which is just such a deplorable practice that they utilize your fear to try and pass bills. And it's like, some would argue that these bills are to make us more safe, but history will show, and has shown in the past, that giving up your liberties for safety will never give you safety. It'll just leave you with neither. It'll leave you with no liberties and no safety. This is temporary safety. There'll always be a different enemy. When this enemy's gone, there'll be someone else. And when I say this enemy, I say terror, and terror will never be gone. We will never eradicate terror from the world, okay? Let's just get that straight. entering a war against terror is worse than entering the war with Iraq. It's not a 10-year war, it's a forever war. And it's a losing battle. All you can do is try to protect your own country, you know, and try to be vigilant. But instead they want to say they can put people in jail without a trial or whatever. So, yeah, so now we've lost our right to a trial. They're spying on us with the Safety Act, or the, what's it called, the Patriot Act. And they're not just like spying, they're not like, if you think about it, people are like, oh yeah, I better not say the T word, you know, I can't. But that's why I have to try and figure out what the hell people are saying to me on the phone whenever they don't want to say exactly what they're thinking. And the fact is that it's not like these robots or whatever, like these special listening devices are finding key words and focusing in on them. They're just listening randomly to everyone's conversation. This is, again, not a conspiracy. It's how it works. They're just taking little bits and pieces from everyone's conversation. They've taken away that. They've taken out the right to a fair trial. They're calling for indefinite detention. And all in the way of, all by relating it all to terror and saying that we have a foreign enemy. And James Madison, the fourth president, and actually my favorite so far, said, if tyranny and oppression come to this land, it will be under the guise of fighting a foreign enemy. And that was a very wise man said that. But, you know, so 9/11 happened. Airplanes crashed into the towers. Bush used it as a big thing. And he even said, an evil exists that threatens every man, woman, and child of this great nation, and we must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland. And no, he didn't say that. That was Hitler. Sorry. That was Hitler, yeah. Okay. Well, actually, there's a few interesting parallels there, because Hitler also, what happened is the Reichstag building burned down, a big national building, and he blamed it on, he told everybody that this was communist. He blamed it on communists, gave a few great speeches saying that there was evil out there that they had to stop in the interest of domestic security, homeland security, and then passed the Enabling Act once he had the support of the people. And had people sufficiently convinced that communists were in their homeland destroying buildings, he then passed the Enabling Act, which basically stripped the German people of their constitution, you know? And it just sounds too much like and of course, it's now known that Hitler, in fact, himself, had the building burned down. It wasn't communists. So, yeah, so now you could say, similar to Hitler, the U.S. uses fear to coerce people. And now they're using it with Iran, and they've got people concerned that Iran is such a legitimate threat. They're telling, and they've got this whole farce going about how Iran is trying to build nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, most experts don't even believe that they're trying to. They believed that they were in 2006, and then they closed down those facilities. And Iran they're notoriously anti-nuke. And they've even come out and said, why would we build 2 nukes? So are we going to hold up, you guys have 200 nukes, you know? Which really, now we're, putting sanctions on them. And the ironic thing is that they've really stayed within the treaty for the most part, the nuclear proliferation treaty. But actually, we haven't, where America and the UK have come under fire many times for trading nukes and not going towards nuclear disarmament, which was the whole point of the treaty. But I'll go in depth on the whole thing with Iran in probably the next video. The point is, the U.S. is now using fear coercion. Now, their new thing is a news story that I just saw yesterday where mothers of people who died in 9/11 are now suing Iran under the completely ridiculous claim that they knew about 9/11 or that they deserve some of the blame for 9/11, and so they should have to pay reparations. Now, obviously, this is just a ridiculous lawsuit. Some moms got together and they're suing another country. I wonder who's really behind that. So that way, now they're going to attach Iran to the. Give me a break. So, I guess I'll just close. The U.S. has been using fear to coerce you and me and everyone into supporting pieces of legislation, supporting action, supporting going to war. And since this whole thing has been about semantics, since I've touched on semantics at least a few times throughout this video, I just want to close right now because it's getting kind of long by saying that by sharing Webster's definition of terrorism. Webster says that terrorism is the repeated use of terror in order to coerce, or in other words, it's the systematic use of fear and anxiety to convince people to act or feel a certain way. And you can just make your own conclusions. Sounds a little bit like the U.S., but again, they use their own definition, which seems to include just about everybody except them.